1. Engaging introduction, the illusion of heaven and hell. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of your life, looking back at every decision you've ever made, every joy, every regret, all shaped by the hope of heaven or the fear of hell. What if, in that moment, you realized that these concepts were never destinations waiting for you, but states of mind that you lived through every single day? What if the paradise you've been chasing and the torment you've been avoiding are illusions, mere reflections of your own actions, emotions, and thoughts? This isn't just a provocative idea. It's the foundation of a revolutionary perspective introduced by the Buddha over 2,500 years ago. The Buddha challenged us to question everything we take for granted about life, death, and what lies beyond. He turned conventional spirituality on its head by teaching that heaven and hell are not eternal realms governed by a deity, but fleeting states created by our own minds. In this video, we'll explore how these ideas challenge traditional beliefs found in the Bible, Quran, and other spiritual traditions. More importantly, we'll dive into how these teachings offer a path to freedom. Right here, right now. Along the way, you'll hear stories that illuminate the Buddha's profound wisdom and gain insights that might just change the way you see your own life. But before we begin, let me ask you, what if the heaven or hell you fear isn't waiting for you in some distant afterlife, but is already part of your everyday experience? And more importantly, what would it mean if you had the power to transcend it? Stay with us as we unravel these questions and uncover a deeper truth, one that could transform not just how you live, but how you understand existence itself. 2. Origins of heaven and hell across cultures. Heaven and hell have been central concepts in human spirituality for millennia, deeply embedded in the moral fabric of societies worldwide. These ideas serve as both a guide and a deterrent, promising paradise for the virtuous and torment for the wicked. However, while they may shape human behavior, their interpretations and implications vary significantly across cultures and religions. Heaven and hell in Christianity and Islam. In Christianity, heaven is often portrayed as the ultimate reward, a place of eternal peace and communion with God for those who have led righteous lives. Hell, on the other hand, is described as a fiery abyss, a realm of suffering reserved for sinners. These depictions, prominently illustrated in works like Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, have influenced Western thought for centuries. Similarly, in Islam, the concepts of Jannah, paradise, and Jahannam, hell, play a pivotal role. Jannah is depicted as a garden of bliss, filled with unimaginable delights for the faithful who have adhered to the principles of Islam. Conversely, Jahannam is a place of intense suffering for those who have strayed from the path. Both destinations are determined by one's deeds and faith, underscoring a dualistic moral structure. These frameworks, while powerful, create a dichotomy that often instills both hope and fear. For figures like Saint Augustine, this duality reinforced the importance of strict adherence to faith. However, it also perpetuated a cycle of longing for reward and dread of punishment, deeply influencing Western and Middle Eastern spirituality. Heaven and hell in Hinduism. Hinduism introduces a more cyclical perspective, incorporating the concepts of heaven, svarga, and hell, naraka, within the broader framework of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In this tradition, heaven is not an eternal destination, but a temporary realm where souls enjoy the fruits of their good karma. Similarly, hell is a transient state where souls experience the consequences of their negative actions. For instance, the Garuda Purana, a Hindu text, vividly describes the punishments in Naraka for various sins. Yet, these punishments are not eternal, they serve as a purification process before the soul continues its journey. This impermanence aligns with the Hindu emphasis on karma as the ultimate determinant of one's spiritual progression. The fluidity of these realms reflects the interconnectedness of actions and consequences in Hindu philosophy, moving away from the fixed notions of eternal reward or punishment found in Abrahamic traditions. The role of fear and desire. Across these traditions, the concepts of heaven and hell function as powerful motivators. By promising eternal bliss or threatening endless suffering, they guide moral behavior and social order. However, they also cultivate fear and desire, emotions that can bind individuals to cycles of attachment and aversion. Take, for example, the life of Martin Luther, a central figure in the Protestant Reformation. Luther's early years were marked by an intense fear of damnation, driving him to seek solace in rigorous religious practices. Yet, this fear became a source of spiritual torment, illustrating how the promise of heaven and threat of hell can create inner turmoil. Similarly, in contemporary settings, many people experience anxiety over their eternal fate. This focus on an afterlife can distract from the present, trapping individuals in a mindset dominated by fear and longing. The revolutionary perspective of Buddhism. In stark contrast to these frameworks, the Buddha offered a revolutionary perspective on heaven and hell, rejecting the notion of eternal destinations. He reframed them as temporary states of existence, shaped by one's thoughts, emotions, and actions. Heaven and hell as temporary states. In Buddhist cosmology, heaven and hell are not places of eternal reward or punishment, but impermanent realms within the cycle of samsara. Acts of compassion, generosity, and wisdom can lead to rebirth in heavenly realms, while acts of greed, hatred, and ignorance may result in hellish states. However, these experiences are fleeting, reflecting the transient nature of all phenomena. For example, someone who lives with kindness and selflessness might find themselves in a blissful state of mind or a favorable rebirth. Conversely, someone consumed by anger and hatred might experience inner torment, akin to a personal hell. The story of the warrior and the monk, a famous Buddhist parable, perfectly illustrates this concept. A cruel warrior approached a monk and demanded, "Show me heaven and hell." The monk, unfazed, replied, "You are nothing but a coward." Enraged, the warrior drew his sword, prepared to strike. The monk calmly said, "That is hell." Stunned by the monk's composure, The warrior lowered his sword. Overcome with admiration, the monk continued. And that is heaven. This simple yet profound story reveals that heaven and hell are not external places, but states of mind created by our actions and reactions. The warrior's rage and willingness to kill plunged him into a hellish state, while his humility and respect for the monk elevated him to a heavenly one. Buddhism's emphasis on liberation. The Buddha's rejection of eternal heaven and hell reflects his broader teachings on liberation. By understanding that these states are impermanent and self-created, individuals can break free from the cycles of fear and desire that bind them to suffering. Personal transformation. Consider the story of Ashoka the Great, an Indian emperor who initially ruled with brutality. After converting to Buddhism, he embraced the path of compassion and non-violence, transforming his reign into one of peace and prosperity. Ashoka's journey demonstrates how letting go of attachments to power and fear of retribution can lead to profound personal and societal change. A modern interpretation. In today's world, the ideas of heaven and hell often manifest as psychological states. Success, wealth, and recognition can feel like heaven, while failure, loss, and shame can feel like hell. Yet, as Buddhism teaches, these experiences are impermanent, shaped by our perceptions and reactions. For example, consider the life of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist. Despite enduring unimaginable suffering, Frankl found meaning and purpose in his experiences, demonstrating that even in the darkest of circumstances, one's mindset can create a sense of peace and transcendence. Conclusion. By reimagining heaven and hell as temporary states rather than eternal destinations, Buddhism shifts the focus from external judgment to internal transformation. This perspective empowers individuals to take responsibility for their actions and cultivate a life of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. It challenges us to transcend the dualities of reward and punishment, embracing a path of liberation that leads not to an otherworldly paradise, but to true peace and freedom in the here and now. 3. Nirvana, liberation beyond dualities. Nirvana is one of the most profound and transformative concepts in Buddhism, representing ultimate freedom from suffering, desire, and attachment. Unlike the heaven of Christianity or Islam, Nirvana is not a reward for righteousness. It is not a place at all. Instead, it is a state of being, an experience of profound peace and liberation from the endless cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. Understanding Nirvana and its radical departure from dualistic notions of eternal paradise or punishment offers a fresh perspective on spirituality, focusing on inner transformation rather than external destinations. The Four Noble Truths, a roadmap to Nirvana. The Buddha's teachings on Nirvana are rooted in the Four Noble Truths, a framework designed to help individuals understand and overcome suffering. 1. The truth of suffering, dukkha. Life is inherently marked by suffering, physical pain, emotional distress, and existential dissatisfaction. 2. The truth of the cause of suffering. Suffering arises from attachment, craving, and ignorance. Our desires bind us to the endless cycle of longing and aversion. 3. The truth of the end of suffering, Nirvana. There is a way to end suffering by transcending attachment and ignorance. 4. The truth of the path to the end of suffering. The Eightfold Path provides a practical guide to achieving Nirvana. Through ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. These truths are not abstract principles but practical insights into the nature of human existence. They highlight the impermanence of all things and the futility of clinging to what is transient. Nirvana versus heaven. Nirvana stands in stark contrast to the idea of heaven in Abrahamic traditions. While heaven is often depicted as a realm of eternal bliss, Nirvana transcends such dualities. It is not a place one goes to but a state one attains. By letting go of all attachments, including the desire for heavenly rewards, the absence of judgment. In traditions like Christianity and Islam, entry into heaven or hell is determined by divine judgment. Nirvana, however, is self-attained. There is no deity to please, no external arbiter of fate. It is achieved through self-realization and the cultivation of wisdom, ethics, and mindfulness. The Buddha's Enlightenment. The story of the Buddha's own journey to Nirvana serves as a timeless example of this path. Born Siddhartha Gautama, he was a prince shielded from the realities of suffering. Upon encountering old age, sickness, and death, he realized the inevitability of suffering and renounced his royal life in search of a deeper truth. For years, Siddhartha practiced extreme asceticism, believing that self-denial was the path to liberation. However, he found this approach as unfulfilling as indulgence in worldly pleasures. This realization led him to the middle way, a balanced approach, avoiding both extremes of self-indulgence and self-mortification. Under the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha meditated deeply and attained enlightenment. He realized the impermanence of all things and the interdependence of existence. Breaking free from the cycles of suffering, he became the Buddha, the awakened one, and spent the rest of his life teaching others how to walk the path to Nirvana. A radical shift in perspective. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Nirvana is its rejection of eternalism and nihilism. The Buddha taught that clinging to ideas of eternal paradise, eternalism, or believing in total annihilation after death, nihilism, both miss the mark. Nirvana transcends these polarities, offering a freedom beyond all conceptual frameworks. Example from history. This philosophy influenced thinkers like Nagarjuna, a 2nd century Buddhist philosopher, who expanded on the concept of emptiness, shunyata. Nagarjuna argued that all phenomena lack inherent existence, and that liberation comes from realizing this truth. His teachings laid the groundwork for Mahayana Buddhism and its emphasis on compassion and wisdom. Practical applications of Nirvana. While Nirvana might seem like an abstract or distant goal, its principles are deeply relevant to modern life. By understanding and applying the teachings of the Buddha, individuals can experience profound inner peace and freedom from the stresses of daily existence. Letting go of attachments. In today's world, people are often consumed by materialism, ambition, and the need for external validation. These attachments create endless cycles of longing and dissatisfaction. Nirvana teaches us to recognize the impermanence of these desires and to let them go. Mindfulness in action. Practices like mindfulness meditation help individuals cultivate awareness and detachment from fleeting thoughts and emotions. For example, a person overwhelmed by anxiety might learn to observe their thoughts without judgment, breaking free from the cycle of fear and overthinking. Story example. Consider Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple. While Jobs was known for his drive and ambition, he also practiced meditation and studied Zen Buddhism. In his later years, he spoke about the importance of understanding impermanence and focusing on what truly matters. Jobs's reflections align closely with Buddhist teachings on letting go of attachment and finding meaning in the present moment. The Eightfold Path, a practical guide. The Eightfold Path offers a step-by-step approach to achieving nirvana, addressing ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. 1. Right view, understanding the Four Noble Truths and the nature of reality. 2. Right intention, cultivating thoughts of compassion and renunciation. 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully and avoiding harmful language. 4. Right action, acting ethically and refraining from harm. 5. Right livelihood, earning a living in a way that aligns with ethical principles. 6. Right effort, cultivating positive mental states and overcoming negative ones. 7. Right mindfulness, developing awareness of the present moment. 8. Right concentration, practicing meditation to achieve mental clarity and focus. By following this path, individuals can systematically dismantle the causes of suffering and move closer to nirvana, breaking free from the cycle of samsara. At its core, nirvana is about liberation from samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth driven by ignorance and attachment. While samsara represents the conditioned existence of craving and aversion, nirvana signifies unconditioned freedom. The role of compassion. In Mahayana Buddhism, the pursuit of nirvana is often paired with the cultivation of compassion, karuna. Bodhisattvas, enlightened beings who delay their own entry into nirvana to help others, embody this ideal. Figures like the Dalai Lama continue to inspire millions by exemplifying this compassionate approach to liberation. A modern reflection. Nirvana is not an unattainable ideal reserved for monks or sages. It is a path accessible to anyone willing to look inward and cultivate mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. In a world filled with distractions and suffering, the teachings of Nirvana offer a profound reminder. True peace and freedom are not found in external achievements or destinations but within ourselves. By understanding and practicing the principles of Nirvana, we can break free from the cycles of longing and aversion, discovering a deeper sense of purpose and serenity in the present moment. 4. Karma, the natural law of cause and effect. Karma is one of the most widely recognized concepts in Buddhism. Yet it is also one of the most misunderstood, often mistaken as divine punishment or reward. Karma in Buddhist philosophy operates as a natural law of cause and effect. Every action, intention, and thought sets into motion a ripple of consequences, shaping not only our current experiences but also the conditions of our future. Unlike the judgment-based frameworks of many religious traditions, karma in Buddhism is impersonal, self-directed, and profoundly empowering. It invites us to take full responsibility for our actions emphasizing that the seeds we plant today determine the fruits we harvest tomorrow. Karma in contrast with divine judgment. In many religious traditions, actions are evaluated by a deity who determines an individual's fate. For instance, in Christianity, one's deeds are judged by God, leading to either eternal paradise or damnation. Similarly, in Islam, Allah evaluates a person's faith and actions to decide their place in Jannah, heaven, or Jahannam, hell. Buddhism, however, takes a different approach. Karma is not mediated by a divine being, it is an inherent law of the universe. Positive actions, those rooted in compassion, generosity, and wisdom, create beneficial outcomes, while negative actions, those driven by greed, hatred, and ignorance, lead to suffering. This process is entirely natural, devoid of external judgment. Example: a well-known figure like Mahatma Gandhi exemplifies this principle. His actions, rooted in nonviolence and compassion, not only shaped his life, but also created a legacy of peace and justice. This illustrates how positive intentions ripple outward, influencing not just one's own life but the lives of others. The mechanics of karma. At its core, karma operates on three levels: thoughts, words, and deeds. Every intention we hold, every word we speak, and every action we take generates an energy that influences our inner state and external circumstances. 1. Thoughts. A thought driven by kindness or malice has the power to shape our mental landscape. For example, harboring resentment creates inner turmoil, while cultivating gratitude fosters peace of mind. 2. Words. Speech can uplift or harm others. A sincere compliment can brighten someone's day, while a harsh criticism can wound deeply. 3. Deeds. Our actions have tangible consequences. Acts of generosity, like helping someone in need, create positive ripples, while acts of harm sow seeds of suffering. Story example. Consider the story of Angulimala, a notorious bandit during the Buddha's time. Angulimala had committed countless crimes. Yet when he encountered the Buddha, he experienced a profound transformation. The Buddha taught him that while his past actions had sown negative karma, he could change the trajectory of his life through mindfulness and compassion. Angulimala became a monk, dedicating his life to helping others, demonstrating the transformative power of intentional action. Karma and self-responsibility. One of the most empowering aspects of karma is its emphasis on self-responsibility. In Buddhism, we are not passive recipients of fate, but active participants in shaping our reality. This principle encourages mindfulness and intentional living, reminding us that our choices have far-reaching consequences. Personal reflection. I once spoke with a friend who often blamed external circumstances for their unhappiness. When they began exploring Buddhist teachings, they realized that their reactions to situations were often the root of their suffering. By taking responsibility for their thoughts and actions, they gradually transformed their mindset, finding greater peace and resilience. Karma as a tool for liberation. Karma is not just a mechanism for explaining suffering. It is a tool for liberation. By understanding and applying the principles of karma, we can break free from harmful patterns and cultivate a life of purpose and peace. 1. Planting positive seeds. Every action is an opportunity to plant seeds for a brighter future. Acts of kindness, patience, and generosity not only benefit others, but also nurture inner joy. 2. Breaking negative cycles. Awareness of karma helps us identify and break cycles of negativity. For instance, recognizing that anger leads to suffering can inspire us to practice forgiveness and compassion instead. 3. Living in the present. Karma reminds us that the present moment is the most powerful place for change. By focusing on mindful action here and now, we shape the conditions of our future. The ripple effect of karma. Karma extends beyond individual lives, influencing families, communities, and even societies. Positive actions can create a ripple effect, inspiring others to act with kindness and integrity. Example from history. Think of figures like Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, Mandela emerged with a message of forgiveness and reconciliation, rather than anger or revenge. His actions inspired a nation to heal and rebuild, illustrating how one person's positive karma can ripple outward, affecting millions. Misconceptions about karma. Karma is often misunderstood as fatalistic or punitive. Phrases like, "karma will get you," reinforce the idea of inevitable punishment. However, this interpretation misses the essence of Buddhist teachings. Karma is not about punishment but about learning and growth. Clarifying misconceptions. 1. Karma is not instant. While some actions may have immediate consequences, others take time to bear fruit. This delay underscores the importance of patience and persistence. 2. Karma is not fixed. Our past actions influence our present, but they do not define it. At any moment, we can choose to act differently, creating new karmic patterns. 3. Karma is not divine retribution. Karma is neutral and impersonal. It operates as a natural law, not as a moral judgment. Karma and modern life. In a fast-paced world, where people often act on impulse, karma serves as a reminder of the power of intentional living. It encourages us to pause, reflect, and choose actions that align with our values. Practical applications. Mindfulness practice. Before reacting to a difficult situation, take a moment to breathe and consider the potential consequences of your actions. Acts of generosity. Small acts, like helping a stranger or expressing gratitude, create positive ripples that uplift both the giver and the receiver. Self-reflection. Regularly reflect on your actions and intentions. Are they rooted in kindness? Or are they driven by fear or selfishness? Example. Imagine a busy professional who feels stressed and overwhelmed. By practicing mindfulness and focusing on small acts of kindness, such as offering a word of encouragement to a colleague, they begin to transform their work environment. Over time, this shift creates a more positive and supportive atmosphere for everyone involved. Conclusion: Karma as a path to freedom. Karma is not a system of reward and punishment, but a profound principle of cause and effect that empowers us to shape our lives. By understanding and applying the teachings of karma, we can break free from harmful cycles, cultivate positive patterns, and create a life of greater meaning and fulfillment. This principle reminds us that we are the architects of our own destiny. With every thought, word, and deed, we have the power to plant seeds of compassion, wisdom, and joy, nurturing a future that reflects the best of who we are. 5. The illusion of the self, anatta. One of the most transformative teachings in Buddhism is the concept of anatta, or no self. It challenges the deeply ingrained belief in a fixed, unchanging self, the I that we often cling to as the core of our identity. According to the Buddha, this sense of self is an illusion, a construct of constantly changing thoughts, emotions, and experiences. This teaching of anatta not only reshapes our understanding of who we are, but also offers a path to liberation. By letting go of the attachment to a false self, we can break free from suffering and experience a profound sense of freedom and interconnectedness. The nature of the self, a universal question. The question of selfhood has been central to human thought for centuries. In most religious traditions, the self is considered eternal. In Christianity and Islam, the soul is believed to be a permanent entity that will face judgment after death. Hinduism also upholds the concept of the Atman, or the eternal soul, which travels through cycles of birth and rebirth. Buddhism, however, takes a radically different stance. The Buddha taught that there is no permanent, unchanging self. Instead, what we perceive as the self is a collection of 5 aggregates, skandhas: form, body, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These aggregates are in constant flux, giving rise to the illusion of a cohesive identity. Example from philosophy. René Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am," anchoring identity in the act of thinking. Buddhism would counter this by pointing out that even thoughts are impermanent and ever-changing, making them an unstable foundation for defining the self. The chariot analogy, explaining no self. To illustrate the concept of anatta, the Buddha used the analogy of a chariot. A chariot is made up of parts, wheels, axles, a frame. But none of these parts individually constitute the chariot. The chariot exists only as a combination of its parts, and without them, it ceases to exist. Similarly, the self is not a single, fixed entity, but a combination of elements that are constantly changing. Modern analogy. Think of a smartphone. Is the phone its screen, its battery, or its software? None of these individually make up the phone. And yet, together, they function as one. When parts are removed or replaced, the phone as we know it changes or ceases to exist. The self operates in much the same way. Clinging to the self, the root of suffering. The illusion of a permanent self leads to attachment, ego, and suffering. We cling to identities, our roles, achievements, possessions, and relationships, believing they define who we are. When these things are threatened or lost, we experience fear, anxiety, and grief. Example from history. Take the case of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a Roman ruler and philosopher. Despite his immense power, Marcus meditated on the impermanence of life and the self. Writing in his meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." His Stoic reflections parallel Buddhist teachings on letting go of attachment to the self and embracing impermanence, the illusion of control. Believing in a fixed self often leads to a false sense of control over life. We think we can protect and preserve this self. But the reality is that everything is subject to change. Our bodies age, relationships evolve, and circumstances shift, often beyond our control. Story example. The Buddha once told the story of a man shot by a poisoned arrow. Instead of seeking immediate treatment, the man insisted on knowing who shot the arrow, where they came from, and what kind of wood the arrow was made of. The Buddha used this parable to illustrate how clinging to irrelevant details, such as the nature of the self, prevents us from addressing the root cause of our suffering, the liberation of letting go. When we realize that the self is an illusion, we can let go of the ego-driven need to protect, define, or elevate it. This doesn't mean we lose our individuality, but rather that we stop clinging to it as something fixed and permanent. 1. Interconnectedness. Without a fixed self, we see our interconnectedness with others and the world. Just as a wave is part of the ocean, we are part of a greater whole. 2. Freedom from fear. Much of our fear of death, failure, rejection, stems from the belief in a self that needs to be preserved. Recognizing the impermanence of the self helps us approach life with greater equanimity. Personal reflection. I once struggled with the fear of failure, tied to a need to uphold a specific identity. When I began exploring the concept of anatta, I realized that my sense of self was fluid, shaped by circumstances and perceptions. Letting go of this attachment brought a sense of relief, and allowed me to embrace change more openly. The role of mindfulness in understanding no self. Mindfulness meditation is a key practice for experiencing and understanding anatta. By observing thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they arise and pass, we begin to see their impermanence. This practice helps us detach from the illusion of a fixed self and live more fully in the present. Exercise. Try this simple meditation. Sit quietly and focus on your breath. Notice any thoughts that arise, but don't cling to them. Instead, observe them as clouds passing in the sky. Over time, you'll start to see that your thoughts and feelings are not you. They are temporary phenomena that come and go. Anatta and modern psychology. The Buddhist concept of no-self aligns with modern psychological insights. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, emphasizes that thoughts are not facts, and that we can choose how to respond to them. Similarly, the self in psychology is often seen as a construct, shaped by experiences and social contexts. Example: Carl Jung, a pioneer in psychology, explored the idea of the persona, the mask we wear in social situations. Jung recognized that our identities are fluid and multifaceted, echoing the Buddhist understanding of the self as impermanent, anatta, and rebirth. One common question is, if there is no self, who or what is reborn? In Buddhist philosophy, rebirth is not about a soul traveling from one life to another. Instead, it is the continuation of karma, actions and energy, creating conditions for new life. Analogy: imagine lighting one candle with the flame of another. The new flame is not identical to the first, yet it is connected. Similarly, rebirth is the transfer of energy and consequences, not the movement of a fixed self. Practical benefits of embracing no self. Understanding and embracing anatta can transform how we live. 1. Less attachment. By letting go of rigid identities, we become more adaptable. Losing a job or facing criticism doesn't threaten our sense of worth. 2. Better relationships. Recognizing the fluidity of the self fosters empathy and reduces conflicts, as we see others as dynamic, ever-changing beings. 3. Inner peace. Without the constant need to defend or enhance the self, we experience greater equanimity and freedom. Conclusion: the power of letting go. The illusion of self is one of the most persistent sources of suffering. By recognizing and embracing anatta, we can break free from this illusion, finding liberation and peace. This teaching reminds us that we are not isolated, unchanging entities, but dynamic, interconnected parts of a greater whole. Letting go of the self is not a loss. It is a profound gain, a path to true freedom and understanding. 6. Rebirth without a soul. One of the most intriguing and often misunderstood aspects of Buddhism is the concept of rebirth. Unlike the reincarnation found in Hinduism, where the Atman, eternal soul, transmigrates from one body to another, Buddhism teaches that there is no permanent self, anatta, that carries over. Instead, rebirth in Buddhism is the continuation of actions and energy, like a flame passing from one candle to another, without the need for a fixed soul. This perspective challenges conventional notions of life and death, inviting us to rethink what it means to exist and how our actions shape not only our lives, but the lives and conditions that follow. Rebirth in Hinduism versus Buddhism. To understand Buddhist rebirth, it's helpful to contrast it with reincarnation. In Hinduism, the Atman, a permanent, unchanging soul, travels through cycles of birth, death, and rebirth based on karma. The ultimate goal is to reunite the soul with Brahman, the universal consciousness. Buddhism, however, rejects the notion of an eternal soul. According to the Buddha, what we perceive as the self is a collection of ever-changing processes. And at death, these processes cease. Rebirth occurs not because a soul moves from one life to another, but because the energy of our actions, karma, sets conditions for the next existence. The flame analogy. The Buddha explained rebirth using the analogy of a flame. Imagine lighting one candle with another. The second flame is not identical to the first, yet it was directly influenced by it. Similarly, the conditions of one life give rise to the next. But there is no unchanging soul that transfers. This analogy highlights two key principles. 1. continuity without identity. There is a connection between lives, but no fixed entity carries over. 2. Causality. Rebirth is driven by karma, the cause and effect nature of actions, not by an independent self. How karma fuels rebirth. Karma plays a central role in rebirth. Every action, thought, and intention creates an energy that influences future conditions. Positive actions rooted in compassion and wisdom lead to favorable conditions, while negative actions driven by greed and hatred lead to suffering. For example, a person who cultivates generosity and kindness may create conditions for a more peaceful rebirth in a higher realm. Conversely, someone consumed by anger and selfishness may experience a rebirth in more challenging conditions, reflecting their inner turmoil. However, these realms, whether blissful or hellish, are temporary, emphasizing the impermanence of all existence. The Buddhist realms of rebirth. In Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 realms where beings can be reborn, depending on their karma. 1. God realm, Devas. A realm of pleasure and abundance. However, beings here can become complacent and fail to seek enlightenment. 2. Demigod realm, Asuras. A realm marked by jealousy and competition. 3. Human realm. Considered the most favorable for spiritual practice, as it balances suffering and joy, fostering the pursuit of enlightenment. 4. Animal realm. A realm of ignorance and instinct, where beings are driven by survival. 5. Hungry ghost realm, Pretas. A realm of insatiable craving and attachment. 6. Hell realm. A realm of intense suffering, but not eternal damnation. Beings here eventually move on. These realms are not physical places but states of existence shaped by karma and mental conditions. Rebirth without a soul, a philosophical shift. The idea of rebirth without a soul can be difficult to grasp, especially in cultures where the concept of a permanent self is deeply ingrained. However, this perspective offers profound insights into the nature of existence. 1. Impermanence, Anicca. Everything, including our sense of self, is impermanent. Rebirth reflects this constant state of flux. 2. Interdependence, Praditya Samutpada. Rebirth highlights the interconnectedness of all things. Our actions don't just shape our future but also impact the world around us. Example from history. Consider Ashoka the Great, the Indian emperor who embraced Buddhism after witnessing the horrors of war. His transformation and subsequent efforts to spread peace and justice reflect how actions ripple outward, shaping not only one's current life but also the conditions for others in the future. The misconceptions about rebirth. Rebirth is often misunderstood as a literal recycling of a person's identity. However, Buddhism emphasizes that it is not you who is reborn but the energy and consequences of your actions. Common misconceptions. 1. Rebirth is reincarnation. Rebirth does not involve a soul or fixed self, it is a continuation of energy shaped by karma. 2. Rebirth is immediate. The conditions for rebirth depend on karma and may unfold over time. 3. Rebirth is deterministic. While karma influences rebirth, it does not predetermine everything. Present actions can create new karmic conditions. Practical implications of rebirth. Understanding rebirth without a soul has profound implications for how we live. 1. Focus on the present. Since rebirth is shaped by our actions and intentions, the present moment becomes the most important place for change. By cultivating mindfulness and positive karma, we shape favorable conditions for the future. 2. Reduce fear of death. Recognizing that there is no permanent self to lose can diminish the fear of death. Instead, we can focus on living ethically and meaningfully. 3. Take responsibility. Without a deity or external force to judge us, we are fully responsible for the conditions we create. Personal reflection. When I first encountered the concept of rebirth in Buddhism, I found it liberating. It shifted my focus from worrying about an eternal soul to considering the impact of my actions here and now. This change in perspective helped me approach life with greater intentionality and purpose. Modern analogies for rebirth. To make the concept of rebirth relatable, consider these modern analogies. 1. Gardening. Planting seeds today determines the kind of garden we cultivate tomorrow. Similarly, our actions sow the seeds of future conditions. 2. Energy transfer. Just as energy is neither created nor destroyed but transforms, karma continues to influence new forms and conditions. Example. Think of the impact of a teacher who inspires their students. While the teacher may retire or pass away, their influence continues to shape the lives of those students and the people they, in turn, inspire. Breaking free from rebirth. The ultimate goal in Buddhism is not to achieve a better rebirth, but to break free from the cycle of rebirth altogether. This state of liberation is called Nirvana, where one transcends the conditions of karma and samsara. Path to liberation. 1. Cultivate ethical conduct through the 5 precepts: non-harming, honesty, restraint, etc. 2. Develop mindfulness and meditation to see the impermanent and interdependent nature of existence. 3. Practice wisdom by understanding the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path. Example of a Bodhisattva. In Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva embodies the ideal of seeking enlightenment not just for oneself but for all beings. Figures like Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, are revered for their dedication to helping others break free from the cycle of rebirth. Conclusion: rebirth as a continuum. Rebirth without a soul challenges us to rethink our understanding of existence. It invites us to let go of the illusion of a permanent self, and to focus instead on the interconnectedness of all things. By cultivating positive karma and living mindfully, we not only improve our current life but also contribute to a cycle of growth and transformation that extends far beyond ourselves. Rebirth is not about clinging to what comes next, but embracing the present moment as the foundation of all that follows. 7. Freedom beyond heaven and hell. One of the most profound shifts the Buddha introduced to spiritual thought was the idea of freedom beyond the dualities of heaven and hell. Rather than viewing life as a balance sheet of good and bad deeds, leading to eternal reward or punishment, the Buddha taught that true liberation comes from transcending these constructs entirely. Heaven and hell, he explained, are not destinations but mental states, impermanent, self-created, and ultimately limiting. This teaching invites us to move beyond fear and desire, encouraging a deeper exploration of the human condition and the freedom that lies beyond our attachment to these binary ideas. The dualities of heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are deeply ingrained in the religious traditions of many cultures, serving as the ultimate symbols of reward and punishment. They establish a framework of morality: act righteously, and you will be rewarded. Stray from the path, and you will suffer. While this framework can encourage ethical behavior, it also perpetuates cycles of longing for heaven and aversion toward hell, keeping people trapped in fear and desire. Example from Western thought. Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy vividly portrays heaven and hell as opposite poles of the afterlife, reinforcing the dualistic mindset. His descriptions of eternal torment and celestial bliss have shaped the moral imagination of the Western world for centuries. Buddhism, however, reframes these concepts. Heaven and hell are not eternal, they are transient states of existence influenced by karma. The Buddha taught that clinging to these ideas, even as motivators, creates suffering because it binds us to a dualistic way of thinking. Mental states as heaven and hell. The Buddha emphasized that heaven and hell are not external places but internal experiences. A mind consumed by anger, jealousy, or greed creates a hellish state, while a mind filled with compassion, generosity, and wisdom creates a heavenly one. Story example. The story of the warrior and the monk illustrates this beautifully. When the enraged warrior raised his sword, the monk calmly said, "That is hell." When the warrior lowered his sword in humility, the monk continued, "And that is heaven." This simple yet profound teaching reveals that our mental states, not some external judge, determine whether we live in heaven or hell at any given moment. Transcending dualities. The Buddha introduced the concept of the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of indulgence and asceticism. Similarly, the middle way invites us to transcend the duality of heaven and hell, by understanding their impermanence and realizing the freedom that lies beyond. 1. Heaven and hell are temporary. In Buddhist cosmology, rebirth into a heavenly or hellish realm is not eternal. These states arise due to karma but eventually pass away, like all phenomena. 2. The problem of clinging. Clinging to the idea of heaven as a reward creates attachment, while fearing hell fosters aversion. Both prevent us from experiencing true liberation. 3. The ultimate goal, Nirvana. Unlike heaven, Nirvana is not a place of reward, but a state of being that transcends all dualities. It is freedom from the cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara, and the mental constructs that bind us. Philosophical example. The Greek philosopher Epictetus shared a similar sentiment in his Stoic teachings. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This mirrors the Buddhist idea that our inner state, not external conditions, determines our experience of heaven or hell. Freedom through awareness. One of the most practical aspects of the Buddha's teaching is the role of mindfulness in breaking free from these dualities. By cultivating awareness of our thoughts and emotions, we can observe how we create our own suffering and learn to let go. Mindfulness practice. Observe your thoughts without judgment. Are you clinging to desires or avoiding discomfort? Notice how these patterns affect your state of mind. Do they create peace or suffering? Gradually practice letting go, focusing instead on the present moment. Example: consider the story of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist. Despite enduring unimaginable suffering, Frankl found meaning in his experiences, transforming his inner state into one of purpose and resilience. His insights align with the Buddhist teaching that freedom comes not from changing external conditions but from changing one's perspective. Living beyond heaven and hell. The Buddha's teachings are not abstract philosophies. They are practical tools for everyday life. By understanding the impermanence of heaven and hell, we can focus on cultivating qualities that lead to lasting peace and freedom. 1. Letting go of fear and desire. Recognize that clinging to desires, heaven, or avoiding fears, hell, keeps us trapped. Instead, focus on living with mindfulness and compassion. 2. Cultivating inner peace. Through meditation and ethical living, we can create a state of inner peace that is independent of external conditions. 3. Acts of kindness and generosity. Simple actions rooted in love and compassion create a sense of joy and connection, dissolving the dualities of reward and punishment. Story example: Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, often taught that peace is available in every moment. He would describe drinking tea mindfully as an act of heaven, while rushing through life in anger was akin to creating hell. His teachings encourage us to find freedom in the present moment, rather than seeking it in some far-off paradise. The middle way in modern life. In today's fast-paced world, the dualities of success and failure, pleasure and pain, mirror the traditional concepts of heaven and hell. The Buddha's teachings offer a way to navigate these extremes with balance and equanimity. Practical applications. 1. Meditation. Practice sitting with your thoughts, observing them without attachment. Notice how desires and fears arise and pass away. 2. Ethical conduct. Live in a way that aligns with your values, not out of fear of punishment or desire for reward but out of genuine care for others. 3. Gratitude practice. Focus on the joys and opportunities in the present moment, rather than longing for an ideal future. A modern reflection. Breaking free from the dualities of heaven and hell is not about rejecting morality but about deepening our understanding of it. By recognizing that these concepts are mental constructs, we can focus on cultivating inner peace and compassion, regardless of external circumstances. Example from contemporary life. Consider someone striving for career success, equating it with their version of heaven, while dreading failure as their personal hell. By adopting a Buddhist perspective, they might shift their focus from outcomes to process, finding fulfillment in the effort and growth, rather than the result. This mindset not only reduces anxiety but also opens the door to genuine joy and connection. Conclusion: freedom beyond dualities. The Buddha's teachings challenge us to transcend the simplistic notions of heaven and hell, inviting us to explore a deeper freedom. By letting go of attachment to rewards and aversions to punishments, we can live with greater mindfulness, compassion, and peace. Heaven and hell. As the Buddha taught, are not external destinations but states of mind. And the path to true liberation lies in understanding and transcending these constructs. Finding freedom in the present moment. 8. Living the Buddhist path today. The teachings of Buddhism, though rooted in ancient times, remain profoundly relevant in modern life. The Buddhist path isn't about withdrawing from the world or seeking mystical experiences. It's a practical guide for living a balanced, mindful, and compassionate life in the here and now. By integrating the principles of the Eightfold Path and the wisdom of impermanence, we can navigate the complexities of contemporary existence with clarity and purpose. This section explores how Buddhist teachings can be applied to modern life, offering actionable steps for cultivating mindfulness, ethical living, and inner peace. Practical applications of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a comprehensive framework for living ethically, developing mental discipline, and cultivating wisdom. It's not a rigid doctrine but a practical guide that can be adapted to fit any lifestyle. 1. Right view. Understanding the nature of reality, including the truths of impermanence and interconnectedness, can transform how we perceive challenges. For instance, viewing setbacks as temporary rather than defining moments helps us respond with resilience. 2. Right intention. Aligning our actions with intentions of compassion and kindness creates harmony in our relationships and reduces inner conflict. Before making decisions, ask, does this action stem from care or self-interest? 3. Right speech. Practicing mindful communication, speaking truthfully, avoiding harmful words, and using language to uplift others, can transform personal and professional relationships. 4. Right action. Ethical behavior, such as refraining from harm and practicing generosity, fosters trust and respect. Volunteering or helping someone in need creates a ripple effect of positivity. 5. Right livelihood. Choosing a career or work that aligns with ethical principles ensures that our livelihood contributes to well-being rather than harm. 6. Right effort. Cultivating positive habits and letting go of harmful ones helps us grow. For instance, replacing procrastination with focused effort, or replacing anger with patience creates meaningful change. 7. Right mindfulness. Developing present moment awareness through meditation or mindful practices, such as eating or walking, helps us stay grounded amidst the chaos of modern life. 8. Right concentration. Deepening focus and clarity through meditation enhances our ability to respond to life's challenges with equanimity. Mindfulness, a gateway to peace. Mindfulness is one of the most accessible and transformative practices in Buddhism. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions abound and stress levels are high, mindfulness offers a way to cultivate calm and clarity. Practical tips for mindfulness. 1. Start with the breath. Take a few minutes each day to focus on your breath. Notice its rhythm without trying to change it. This simple practice anchors you in the present. 2. Mindful moments. Incorporate mindfulness into daily activities, like eating, walking, or even brushing your teeth. Pay full attention to the sensations and movements involved. 3. Pause and reflect. Before reacting to a stressful situation, pause and take a deep breath. Ask yourself, What is the most compassionate response in this moment? Example: Jon Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer in mindfulness-based stress reduction, has helped millions integrate mindfulness into their lives. His work illustrates how paying attention to the present moment can reduce stress and improve well-being. Ethical living in a modern context. Ethical conduct is a cornerstone of the Buddhist path. In a world filled with ethical dilemmas, ranging from environmental concerns to workplace conflicts, Buddhist principles provide a moral compass. Key practices. 1. Non-harming, ahimsa. Avoiding harm to others, whether through actions, words, or inactions, fosters a sense of safety and trust. For instance, choosing sustainable products reflects care for the planet and future generations. 2. Generosity, dana. Giving doesn't have to involve money, it can be as simple as offering time, attention, or a kind word. Generosity cultivates a sense of abundance and connection. 3. Accountability. Taking responsibility for one's actions and making amends when necessary strengthens relationships and integrity. Story example: Patagonia founder Yvon Chouinard exemplifies ethical living through his company's commitment to sustainability and giving back to environmental causes. His actions align with Buddhist principles of non-harming and generosity, showing how ethical choices can create meaningful impact. Cultivating compassion in everyday life. Compassion, karuna, is a central tenet of Buddhism, encouraging us to see the suffering of others as interconnected with our own. By practicing compassion, we build deeper relationships and contribute to a more harmonious world. Ways to practice compassion. 1. Active listening. Truly listen to others without judgment or the need to fix their problems. Sometimes, just being present is the most compassionate act. 2. Empathy in action. Look for small ways to alleviate suffering, whether by offering help, expressing gratitude, or simply being kind. 3. Compassion for self. Extend the same kindness to yourself that you would to a loved one. Recognize your own suffering and approach it with understanding rather than self-criticism. Example: the Dalai Lama, one of the most revered Buddhist figures, often emphasizes that compassion begins with small acts. His ability to remain compassionate even in exile exemplifies the transformative power of this practice. Overcoming modern challenges with Buddhist principles. Buddhist teachings offer valuable tools for addressing common modern challenges, such as stress, materialism, and a sense of disconnection. 1. Stress and overwhelm. Meditation and mindfulness can help reduce stress by grounding us in the present moment, instead of worrying about the future or ruminating on the past. Focus on what can be done now. 2. Materialism. The Buddhist understanding of impermanence helps us recognize that material possessions bring only temporary satisfaction. Redirect energy toward meaningful relationships and experiences. 3. Disconnection. Practices like loving-kindness meditation, metta, foster a sense of connection and goodwill toward others, even strangers. Example from history. Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings on interbeing, recognizing our interconnectedness with all life, are especially relevant in addressing environmental issues. He reminds us that caring for the earth is inseparable from caring for ourselves. The role of meditation. Meditation is a cornerstone of the Buddhist path, offering a way to cultivate inner peace, focus, and insight. In a world filled with constant noise and distractions, meditation provides a sanctuary for the mind. Types of meditation. 1. Mindfulness meditation. Focus on the breath, bodily sensations, or thoughts without judgment. 2. Loving-kindness meditation, metta. Cultivate feelings of goodwill toward yourself and others. 3. Insight meditation, vipassana. Observe the impermanent nature of thoughts and experiences to develop wisdom. Personal example. I began a daily meditation practice to manage stress. Over time, I noticed not only reduced anxiety but also greater clarity and patience in difficult situations. Meditation became a tool for navigating life's challenges with equanimity. Building a practice for daily life. The Buddhist path is not about grand gestures but small, consistent steps. By integrating mindfulness, compassion, and ethical living into daily routines, we can create a more peaceful and purposeful life. Simple practices to start. 1. Set aside 5 to 10 minutes each morning for mindfulness meditation. 2. Commit to one act of kindness each day, whether for a stranger or loved one. 3. Reflect each evening on the day's actions, noting moments of mindfulness or opportunities for improvement. Conclusion: living the path. Living the Buddhist path today doesn't require renouncing the world or adopting a monastic lifestyle. It's about embracing the principles of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom in every aspect of life. By doing so, we can navigate the complexities of modern existence with a sense of peace and purpose, contributing to a more harmonious world for ourselves and others. 9. Conclusion: your journey beyond dualities. As we come to the end of this exploration, let's reflect on the journey we've taken together. We've questioned the traditional ideas of heaven and hell, dismantling them as illusions born from fear and desire. We've explored the Buddha's profound teachings, how they challenge us to break free from these constructs, and instead focus on liberation in the here and now. The path to freedom doesn't lie in chasing a distant paradise or avoiding eternal punishment. It lies in cultivating wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness in each moment. Heaven and hell are not destinations, but states of mind, shaped by the choices we make every day. But here's the real challenge. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue living bound by fear and desire? Or will you take the first step toward true freedom? Will you examine your own attachments, your own mental constructs, and begin to let them go? Let's make this a conversation. I want to hear from you. What resonates with you most from this discussion? Do you agree that heaven and hell are illusions? Or do you see them differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, not just to me but to everyone who watches this. Let's create a space where we can question, explore, and grow together. And if this exploration has sparked even a flicker of insight or curiosity in you, consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might need a new perspective on life. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about philosophy. It's about how we live, how we think, and how we can find freedom. Not in some distant afterlife, but here, in this moment. Let's keep walking this path together. Thank you for watching. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts.